Christine, and welcome to this Yin practice to help keep your hips happy. So, for today's practice, you may find that you need a couple of blocks nearby towards the end of practice. So, you can go ahead and move that off to the side, and we will just come to lie down on our backs. So, know that whenever you lay down on your back, you can either come to a full shavasana where you extend your legs out and have your legs open about as wide as your sticky mat, and your arms are by your sides with the palms up. But an alternative, if this tends to feel a little bit tender on your lower back, is to bend your knees. Have your feet still open as wide as your sticky mat, but let your knees just kind of knock in towards one another. We call this constructive rest pose, and it can just give a little bit of space to the lower back when it's feeling a bit tender. So take whichever option feels the most appropriate in your body right now. And take a moment to just feel your body settling on the ground. Notice all the parts of yourself that are touching the mat, the floor, and allow those connections to deepen. And then even start to notice any spaces that are not in contact with the floor. So like maybe the sway of your back or the back of your knees, the back of your neck, any of those little spaces, and just feel how there's air moving there between you and the ground. Start to notice the flow of your breath and how it creates a rising and falling in the belly, in the chest. You can even take one hand and place it on the rib cage and one hand on the belly. To draw awareness to that rising and falling. I invite you to set an intention for today's short practice. We are here to move into our hips and help to keep our hips happy. But your intention may be very personal. Why are you on your mat today? That intention can come from a place of what it is you are seeking to gain from your experience here. Or it may come from deciding consciously what it is you are cultivating by being here. An example, you may be here seeking a moment of peace, or you may be here cultivating disciplined practice. Once you have some clarity around your intention, just repeat it to yourself a couple of times. Good. And you can bring your legs together, stretched out, pointing your toes away, take your arms overhead, and reach out really long. Get a nice big full body stretch going here from toes to fingertips. You can wiggle a little bit side to side as you get the sides of the body to open a bit too. Go ahead and take the knees up into your chest now. So you can be holding onto your shins or maybe even wrapping your arms around your knees. Wherever you are in a moment like this, just be sure that the back of the neck stays long, right? So we don't want to be in a place where we're jutting our chin up, right? If that's happening, then that's a pretty good sign that you either need to move your legs away from you a little bit so that you can get the length in the back of your neck, or if possible, you might need to even put a little pillow underneath your head just to maintain some integrity in your shape. We're going to be on our back for the first portion of our practice, so we want to be sure we're there in a good way. You can rock a bit side to side and feel your back on the ground, giving yourself a little massage. And you can place your hands right on your knees now. Your knees will move a little bit away from your chest. And keeping your knees together, let's just do 3 big circles with the knees in one direction. So all the way around, massaging the sacrum, the lower back, the top of the iliac crest, that's at the top of your pelvis. Good, so you do 3 in one direction, and then we'll do 3 in the other direction. Good, and come back to center, and then we'll do hip circles or knee circles where we actually separate the knees. So let's first just push the knees away, separate them, bring them in, and back to center. So 2 more like that, circling the knees around, just waking up that hip socket. Good. And then we'll do 3 in the other direction. So knees come in, then separate, move away, and come together. 2 more like that. Beautiful. Good. And we'll come into our first stretch. So you can place your left foot on the ground to start here. Keep your knee bent up. And we'll cross that right ankle over the left knee. The foot, the sole of your foot's basically going to face the left side, and your knee should be here. We call this figure 4. If you kind of look at your legs, if you had your left leg extended, it looks like a 4 shape, right? Like the number 4. Now, a couple of options here. You can be right here and use your right hand to just kind of gently push your right knee away a little bit. And if you're getting a hip stretch there, then you're in the right place. Another possibility is to thread the needle. So you're taking your right hand between the 2 legs, your left hand comes around the outside, you pick up the back of your left thigh, and as you do so, now you can start drawing that right shin in a little bit more towards your chest, and that might help you target that stretch in your right hip. You also could be interlacing your fingers around the top of the shin. So no worries about where you are in any of our stretches today. The idea is simply that if you are at a stretch, if you feel a sensation, then you are now helping to increase the mobility in those tissues. That's the only objective. Doesn't matter where we are, so long as we know we are working on changing. Breathe through your sensations. So why are we working to keep our hips happy? Our hips can be so neglected. As some other parts of our body, their feet sometimes are really neglected. Our hips are neglected. Just because we can easily take for granted what they're doing for us throughout the day. And also, specifically with the hips, we move through the same kinds of shapes and motions all the time. Whether you're sitting or you're walking or you're just lying down in bed at night, we tend to keep the legs moving in the same plane. They go a little bit behind us and they go ahead of us, and that's kind of it. But the hip socket is actually a ball and socket and has an opportunity to do so much more than that. Okay, give yourself 3 more really long exhales here as you maybe pull the legs in a little closer on each exhale. I can even exhale out of the mouth. Good. So you can gently release that a little bit, but what I'd like you to do now is slide that right leg so that it crosses completely over your left leg, right? So you've got one knee on top of the other, and you can hold your knees in your hands. Specifically, my left hand is holding my right knee, my right hand is holding my left. And then gently tug the knees in towards the chest. You might be staying with this, or you can start to bring your hands down, your shins a little bit, and even now sort of splay your legs to the sides a little bit here. And that'll get even more of a rotation in the hip socket. targeting some other interesting sensations. So all of our stretches are just attempting to bring back that range of motion that is intended by that joint, that ball and socket joint that's supposed to be able to move in all these different ways. Um, because the more that we can maintain that range of motion and maintain those different movements in that joint, the greater ease that we have in our body, especially as our bodies age. Try to keep your shoulders relaxed, your breath smooth. If our arching theme is to keep our hips happy, it's probably best that we don't do that with anger, right? So try smiling a little bit and be like, this is happy moment. I promise it's happy. There can be so many sensations in the hips that come up. So if you're in the thick of it right now, no, you're not alone. Good. Give yourself one more really good exhale right out of the mouth. Good. You can start to release that. Put your left foot on the floor. Take your right knee in towards your chest. And rock it a bit side to side. And take your knee a little bit more towards your right shoulder. Take your right arm to the inside of the knee. It's going to go across your shin to hold your outer foot. Okay. Now, the foot might seem a little far away. You can always hold the ankle or the shin if that's where you're at. That's totally fine. And then kicking the foot up so that it is facing the ceiling while keeping the knee bent in deeply to your side. So it's called a half happy baby. Now, in this one, you can choose to keep your left knee bent or stretch your left leg out. Now, how do you know if you need to come back to a bent knee? If you're trying to stretch your leg out, and first of all, you're shaking over here with the knee bent, trying to get it straight, it's a good sign that you can just back off a bit and keep your knee bent, foot on the floor. Another thing is, I see this all the time, we start to stretch the leg out and the head starts to come up. Right? So if you've got your head coming up or you've got your chin jutting up again, create some space and some ease by keeping the knee bent. So that's how you can assess for yourself at home which of the variations make the most sense for you in your body. If you do have the leg extended, you can even put your left hand on your thigh and breathe. Just kind of keeping that hip down, the left hip down, while you open up and across the pelvis into the right hip. Good, let's do 3 more big exhales. Good. Slowly now release that. Come back into Shavasana with the legs stretched out. And take a moment to feel what you feel. Your right leg and hip might feel warm right now, tingly, maybe even longer than your left leg does. Maybe. Good. And we'll come back to knees bent, feet on the floor. And now we'll cross that left ankle over your right knee. You do your best to take the same variation on this side as you had on the first side, right? You can push your knee away, or you can pick up the back of your right thigh, or interlace your fingers around the right shin. But I also want to create a little bit of space for the permission of our bodies to be asymmetrical. Rarely do we actually experience mobility and sensation and flexibility and even strength in equal measures from the right to the left side. Sometimes the differences can be small enough that we can do the same shape from one side to the next. And sometimes we just have to be open to the idea that it's going to have to look different right now. Maybe you're going deeper, maybe you're not able to go anywhere near as deep. That's okay. That's okay. Just because we have 2 arms, 2 legs doesn't mean it has to all be the same from one side to the next. Use your exhales to ride through the sensations that you discover. One more big exhale. Good. Start to relax that stretch. But now cross your left leg completely over your right leg. And again, you could be holding your knees as you pull them in towards you, or starting to slide your hands down your shins and splaying the legs out to the side a little bit. So what is a hip? What is the hip? When we say we're going to stretch our hips today, what are we stretching? What are we working with? So the hip is a ball and socket joint, right? So I'm talking about your femur bone. At the top of your femur bone is the ball part, and that fits into a cupping section of your pelvis, right? And it's supposed to be able to move around within there. So that's structurally what it is. That's what it is with your skeleton. But because now we're talking about getting up into this hip area in the pelvis, there's actually a lot of muscles that are related to that whole area. So whether they be muscles of the leg that are attached to the femur and the pelvis, so I'm thinking quadriceps and hamstrings. There's also gluteal muscles, so whether it be the gluteus maximus, minimus, medius, or it be the piriformis, and other muscles throughout the pelvis. And then even back muscles like the QL muscle, like the psoas, all of these muscles are related to the hip in some way because those are muscles attaching to the pelvis and attaching to the femur bone. And so when we're stretching our hips, we're not just doing the hips some good, we're doing the legs some good, and we're doing the back some good, and we're doing our core some good. So keeping your hips happy actually keeps everything happy. Whew. Let's do 3 exhales. Good. You can slowly ease that one up again. Good. You can uncross your legs, place both feet on the ground for a moment. Oh, there you go. Let's take the left knee into the chest and just rock the knee a bit side to side here. Good. And you'll kick your knee a little bit more towards your left shoulder. Take your left arm to the inside of the knee, goes across your shin to the outside of your foot. Okay, holding ankle or shin if that's the better grip for you. And then the foot comes up, but you're keeping a bend in the knee. So it's like you wanted to put the sole of your foot on the ceiling, but then pull it down away from the ceiling so that the knee sinks down beside you. Now try and keep your back, upper back and lower back flat on the ground so you're not like rolling over to one side or the other. And then if you can keep the back of your neck long, and the head on the ground, you can explore the possibility of extending your right leg out along the ground and then anchoring that right hip, right leg down so that you're essentially pulling one hip in one direction and the other hip in the other direction. And breathe. Try Trying to keep your shoulder relaxed while you do this, right? So try not to create tension in one part of the body while you're creating opening in another part of the body. That's just counterproductive. So happy hips are happy legs and happy backs and happy cores and happy everything. All we need to do is just give the body a little bit of opportunity to go back into its full range of motion, all the different shapes and directions that the leg can move around in. And in doing so, we're able to maintain the natural order of things, if you will, the way that the body was intended to move. But over time, with those repetitive movements and similar movements that we do day in and day out, it's only normal that some of that mobility starts to get lost. It's with intention and deliberate, thoughtful action that we can return to that place of ease. Good. Let's do one more big exhale right out of the mouth. Good. You can start to release that. Extend both legs out again. This time, give your legs a little shake. Just let all the sensations start to shake off, dissolve away. And point and flex your feet a couple of times. Good. Bring your knees up into your chest. One more little squeeze there with your knees right through the center. Great. We'll roll over and come up to sitting. And here's where those blocks might prove handy for you. So we're going to come into saddle pose. Now, saddle pose is a little bit different than hero's pose. So hero's pose is when we're sitting between our heels, right? In Virasana. Saddle pose, I do want your heels, your feet together, and you're sitting on your heels, so that you don't bring your knees apart. Now, the reason you might need the blocks is that if your quads are feeling really tight, this might not be a shape that your body feels capable of doing very easily. So then you will do a version of hero's pose where you're going to prop up a little bit, maybe on some blocks, whatever height you need to be able to sit like so. Okay, so you just assess for yourself, can I sit here with a version of ease, and do I need some support to make that happen? All right, so in saddle pose, and knees are open, and we're just going to go ahead and lean back on our hands if we can. Once you're here, you can just pick your bum up for a second, tuck your tailbone, tuck your bum underneath you, and then put it back down a bit. Good. And roll your shoulders back and lift up through your heart. And then if it really feels possible, you could even explore coming down onto your elbows with this one. And I like to hold on to my feet. Just giving ourselves a bit of a thigh stretch, hip flexor stretch, because it's all related to the hips, right? And try bringing a little smile to your face as well. If your face is happy, maybe your hips will be happy too. Breathing into the sensations, trying to soften anything that's unnecessarily tense right now. Good. Let's do 3 more breaths right here. Good. And you can slowly, if you're on your elbows, come back to your hands. If you're leaning on your hands, come back to sitting up. Take a moment there. And then taking your legs out from underneath you. So the feet are open as wide as your sticky mat, knees are up, just leaning back on your hands, and windshield wiper a little here with the knees. Again, here's that range of motion thing, right? As we're getting an internal rotation and then an external rotation of both hips. May your hips be happy with today's practice, knowing that helping us to age in a way that keeps our bodies feeling nimble and just able to keep up with life. Being able to get up and down off the floor, being able to play with our kids, being able to climb some stairs, whatever it is. Maybe you got to squeeze into a tight space at some point. All we need to do is little moments like these regularly enough, and I promise your body will be happy. Thank you so much for sharing this practice with me. Namaste.